Good evening, everyone. This week's Parsha Shmini, Tavshin Pei Aleph, and I'd like to dedicate tonight's shir in memory of my mother, Mrs. Shalom Rabinowitz, Shalom Mitzvahs, Harab Yaakov Eliezer. So, Perek Yud, Pasuk Aleph, chapter 10, verse 1, Vayikchu v'nei Aharon Nadav Avihu, and the sons of Aaron, Nadav and Avihu took, Ish Machtosai, each man his fire pan, Vayitnu behen Eish, they put fire into it, and they placed the incense upon it. Vayakrivu lefnei Hashem, and they offered before God Eish Zara, a strange fire, Asher L'tzivo Eisam, that he had not commanded them to do. So here we have the story of how Nadav and Avihu, Aaron's sons, brought the Ketores, the incense that was burned on the golden altar inside of the sanctuary. This was considered a grave sin on their part, and as the Torah says, "V'taitze eish milefnei Hashem," a fire came out from before God and burnt them. And there's lots of discussion in the commentaries as to what exactly was wrong here. According to some commentaries, they went and they actually brought the Ketores not on the altar, but they brought it into the Holy of Holies, which the only time that's permitted to be done is on Yom Kippur by the Kohen Gadol. It was in Yom Kippur. They were not the Kohanim Gedolim, and therefore what they did was forbidden, and that's what they did wrong. Others say that they actually were somewhat intoxicated. Later on, the Parsha talks about that a Kohen may not do the service if he has drunk a certain amount of wine. They had, and they went and did a service in that state of intoxication. They weren't drunk, but it was already a point of where halacha doesn't allow a Kohen to perform the service because he drank a certain amount. And that's what they did wrong. That was the sin that they committed. At the same time, it's very clear that Nadav and Avihu were very great people, because after they died, Moshe said to Aaron that through Nadav and Avihu was fulfilled what Hashem said to Moshe, B'krevai ekadesh, I shall be sanctified through my holy ones. Hashem told Moshe that the holy ones the death of the holy ones will show God's sanctity and holiness of the sanctuary, of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle. And B'krevai ekadesh, with my holy ones I will be sanctified. And the fact that Nadav and Avihu were the ones who brought that, who were the ones that was fulfilled upon, means they were B'krevai, they were close to me. They were very great people. They're very great and holy people. And therefore, there's much discussion on exactly what motivated them to do this. Such great people wouldn't just sin on their own. They wouldn't just go do a sin for no reason. There had to be something going on. And it's also interesting that there are other factors that the Medrash brings out about what led to what went wrong here. So I want to read to you from the Medrash Sifra that interprets this verse that we just read and brings out a number of points. And the Sifra says like this: when they took the Ketores, they did with great joy. Why? What was the great joy that they did it with? Because they had just witnessed a new fire. Right before the Torah talks about what Nadav and Avihu did, the Torah talks about how a great fire descended from heaven and went onto the altar and brought the sacrifices that were brought as part of the inauguration of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle, into service, and the Kohanim to their service. A fire came down from heaven and consumed the sacrifices to show that the Jewish people's building of the Mishkan and their future service to Hashem was what Hashem wanted and desired. And when they saw that new fire come down, the Medrash says, Amdu lohaisef ahava ahava. They wanted to add love upon love. Meaning, when they saw that fire come down, they saw that as a tremendous expression of love on Hashem's part for the Jewish people. Now, Avihu's reaction was to reciprocate that love, to show that love back. And therefore, vayikhu, they took. Ein kicha la simcha. The word kicha, says the Medrash, means with joy. With tremendous joy. Their intention was to express their love of Hashem for the love that he showed them. Now, the Midrash also points out, why does it call them Bnei Aaron, the sons of Aaron? We know they're the sons of Aaron. And the answer is, because what they did by doing this, they didn't show honor to their father by doing this. Another thing the Midrash adds, they didn't ask Moshe about it. Ish machtasai, a man his fire pan. Ish me'atzma yatsu v'leinatlu eitza zemizeh. Each one went out on his own, and they did not take advice one from the other. Now I want to focus on this last part right now, but let's just put together. What does the Sifra say? The Sifra says is that when Nadav and Abihu did this, what they did now to bring this H Zara, the strange fire, this Kataras, the incense that we're supposed to bring, they were doing it to reciprocate the love that Hashem showed them, you show the whole Jewish people, when he sent down the fire from heaven to consume the sacrifices. And they wanted to reciprocate the love that Hashem showed them with their love, with their expression of love, which would have been bring the Kataras, which is a very unique and special sacrifice. Okay. But the Medrash points out, they didn't show honor to their father, meaning they did it without asking their father, did it instead of their father. They didn't ask Moshe if they could do it. And the third thing mentioned by the Medrash is they didn't ask each other. They didn't discuss it with each other. Each one went on his own. Each one did his own thing. At the end of the day, they both came out with the same idea. But it wasn't like they each kind of said to each other, hey, let's do this. They just kind of did it on their own. And interestingly, the Netziv in his commentary of HaMakdavar points out that the pasuk says the sons of Aaron, Nadav and Avihu took each man his fire pan, and they put in them, meaning in each one a fire, meaning each one had a fire pan, and they put fire coals in each one. And they put katares on it. Now, if we said before that they put fire in them because each one had a pan, then it should say that they put on them katares. Each one put katares on the pan with the fire that they had. That's what it should say. So it says, the HaMakdavar says there at Netziv, he wants to suggest the following. Being that we just read from the Sifra, Ish Machtasai, each man his own fire pan means they didn't discuss it with each other. Therefore, he says like this. What happened was, again, each one on his own decided to do it. Each one had a fire pan with the fire, and they entered, where they were going to go ahead and do. If each one decided now to enter the sanctuary, do what they were going to do, and then one of a sudden they saw each other. They bumped into each other. Hey, you're doing this. I'm doing this. At that point, they decided that they're not going to do separately. They're not going to each one do their own kataris, but rather, one will offer and the other one will help. So therefore, when they took the fire pans, which is what they took before they entered the sanctuary, they each took their own fire pan. Each one had ready to bring kataris on it. But once they discovered each other doing the same thing, they did it together. So therefore it says, and they put on one fire pan, the kataris. They each together did it together. Okay, that's bringing out the idea that, again, this was something that they didn't discuss. They both decided it on their own. And then it adds that they, all of a sudden found each other doing the same thing, and they decided to do it together. But the Medrash points out that they didn't ask each other. They didn't discuss it with each other. So it's a very interesting question. And that question is, clearly, as we said, these were very great people. And according to the Sifra, they did it as an expression of love. But we should assume, and it makes a lot of sense to assume, that they thought this through. It's not like they just did this wild thing. They thought it through. Of course, it was an expression of love. That's why they wanted to do it. But it was something that they probably thought through. Now, if they came out separately to the same conclusion, then what would discussing have helped? There's one thing when people are studying Torah together and they have different perspectives, different understandings, and they argue it out. Okay, so from arguing it out with each other, you come to a better understanding. But here they came to the same conclusion separately. That means if they would have discussed it, they would have also come to the same conclusion. They were in agreement. So why does the Medrash point out that that part of what they did wrong was the fact that they didn't ask each other, didn't discuss it with each other. But if on their own they came out with the same conclusion, then what were they talking with each other? They were in agreement. Shmini Leibowitz, the Chavetz Chaim Yeshiva in New York, gave a very interesting observation. And that it's true, there is an idea that if two people see things differently and together they sharpen each other, correct each other, point at things with each other, things that you wouldn't see on your own, somebody else points out to you because they see things differently than you do. But there's another point of studying what someone else does. And that is that it forces you to crystallize and to put your thoughts into words. It forces you to have to focus your thoughts, crystallize your thoughts, think them through in a way that now you can verbalize it to somebody else. And as you do that, and as you think through it in order to verbalize it, that gives you a chance to think it over and think it through again. Because when you think of something on your own, that's one thing. Your mind works in a certain way, and in your mind, it formulates in a certain way. But once you have to express it to somebody else, and you have to put it into words, you have to now focus your thoughts and condense your thoughts into words that can now be understood by somebody else. That forces you to think through what you're about to do. And therefore, the Gemara said, the Medrash is saying that Nadav and Avihu did not take counsel from each other, didn't discuss it with each other, which means if they would have discussed it with each other, they would have had a chance to stop, not to do what they did. But we asked if they're in agreement, what would talking have done? The answer is that talking to somebody else is not just about different perspectives coming at each other from different ends. It's also the fact that if you have to crystallize, you have to put your thoughts into words, you have to condense your thoughts into words, crystallize your thoughts into words, you have to now formulate that in your mind. That forces you to think. That forces you to think through again, and that gives you a chance to think through again, which gives you a chance to realize where things need to be fixed, what may be wrong, where there are questions. Not because somebody else is pointing it out, but just because you're now forced into thinking them through again. So, although Nadav and Avihu were in agreement to what they both wanted to do, but if they would have discussed it, they would have had to now put their thoughts into words that they could express this to their partner, to their study partner. If they would have done that, then that would have given them the chance to rethink what they were planning on doing, and it would have stopped them from doing it. So the point of the Medrash is to say and to bring out to us that speaking over something with someone is not just about, finding somebody to ask questions. That is a very big part. That's a very, very big part of why it's important to study with someone else, to discuss things, to discuss anything with somebody else. Some people have a different perspective. They'll be able to point out things to you that you wouldn't have seen. But another point is that even if you know somebody is in agreement with you, the fact that now you have to now take your thoughts and put them into words in a way that the other person will understand what you're saying, that itself gives you a chance to rethink what you're doing and to realize where your mistakes may be. And that comes not because necessarily the person is going to disagree with you in some way, but the fact that you have to now crystallize it, put it into words, and share it with someone in a way that they can understand your thoughts, that gives you a chance to rethink and to realize your mistakes. Another point I'd like to focus on is this idea that the Medrash says that once they saw this new fire, they wanted to add love on love. They saw a tremendous love from Hashem. They wanted to reciprocate that love with the bringing of the Ketores. Now, with this, the Netziv again, this commentary on Chumash HaMakdavar, gives a homiletical interpretation to the words that it says, Vayakrivu lefnei Hashem eish zara. They brought before Hashem a strange fire. Asher lo yitzivu eisam. They didn't command them. Now, if what they did was wrong, if this eish zara, the strange fire, is wrong, then it shouldn't say a strange fire that he did not command them to do. It's not about they're doing something they weren't commanded to do. They did something wrong. The wording is not correct. The wording shouldn't be they weren't commanded to do, meaning they did something on their own that they weren't supposed to do. If it's forbidden, you say they did something wrong. The Eish Zara is wrong. It's not just it wasn't commanded. It's wrong. So the Tziv says that based on this Medrash Sifra, then B'derech Darash, a bit of a homiletical interpretation, we can say, Shenichnesu me'esh hislav l'shalavas Hashem. You know what the Eish Zara, the strange fire, is? The fire here is the burning love that they had for Hashem. But that burning love was Zara. It was strange. It wasn't commanded. The Avagav, the Avas Hashem, Yikarihi B'nei Hashem, although love of God is a very precious thing by God when a person loves him, but not in a way that God doesn't command it, which is exactly what happened here. Their motivation was love. Love is a great thing. But just because it's about love of Hashem, if you do something that you're not commanded to do, even if it's out of love of Hashem, if that, put it this way, if that love, if that expression of love that you want to do is not commanded, if that expression of love is not commanded, then it doesn't justify it. So clearly there was something wrong that they did. But although it came from an Eish, it came from a fire, from a burning love of Hashem, it was Asher Leitziva. It was the love of Hashem that, again, love of Hashem is very precious, but one that wasn't commanded. It was in a form that Hashem doesn't command, that Hashem doesn't want. So clearly the act itself was wrong. But the love, the expression of love, which is really a good thing, but it wasn't commanded. It wasn't in the right place. That's how the Tziv gives this derech drash, this homiletical interpretation to these words. But clearly what we have here is a situation where the Aviyu meant well. They wanted to express their burning love of Hashem, but that doesn't justify doing something that's incorrect. The most important thing is to do what Hashem wants us to do. Even if your intentions are good, it's out of a burning love for Hashem. But if it's something that is not wanted by God, it's against Hashem's will, then the fact that it's an expression of his love, expression of love for him, doesn't justify it. It can mean something. It doesn't mean it's not worthless. Clearly their intentions were good. But that wasn't enough to save them, because it was a love of Hashem, which love of Hashem is good, is a good thing, but it wasn't in the right place. It wasn't in the appropriate place. And as much and as great as expressing it for Hashem is, it doesn't override doing what Hashem wants you to do. It doesn't override doing something wrong, which is what they did. So it means that a person, if possible, these are great people, that with all the burning love that they have for Hashem, and that's what motivated them to do what they did. And perhaps they thought that was this kind of expression of Hashem was even more important than the laws involved in it. The lesson at the end was no. The most important thing that we can do is follow what Hashem wants from us, because he ultimately knows what is the best for everything. He has his reasons. He knows how it fits in for whatever we need. And as much as we want to be able to express our love, we have all the good intentions for doing what may not fit into what's the established rules. Nonetheless, what Hashem wants from us, that is the most important. What Hashem wants from us is to follow his will. That's the most important thing that we can do. because that is how we show that we understand that what he wants is ultimately the best. And there's a parable that's given to bring this out. Story is told of a king who sent an ambassador to a different king to deliver a message. So the king who sent his ambassador told the ambassador, I want to warn you, when you're in that country, do not make a wager with anyone. No wagers with anyone whatsoever when you're there in that country. The ambassador said, fine. The ambassador went to the other king, delivered the message. And the king turned to the ambassador and said, I have to ask you a question. What did I do wrong that your king sent a hunchback to deliver this message to me? The ambassador said, hunchback? Yes, the king said. You're a hunchback. And this is the kind of person that is sent to deliver a message to a king? He said, Your Highness, I'm not a hunchback. And the king said, sure you are. I can tell you're a hunchback and you're just covering it up with your clothing. And the ambassador said, Your Highness, I'm not a hunchback. And the king said, look, I'll bet you 10,000 golden coins that you're a hunchback. 10,000 golden coins. If you're not a hunchback, I'll give you 10,000 golden coins. Now, this put the ambassador in a dilemma. The king had told him, back up, sorry. The king says, 10,000 golden coins to your king, right, if you're not a hunchback. It's a wager. This put the ambassador in a tough place. The king had told him no wagers. But this was easy money for the king. 10,000 golden coins for the king, that's a lot of money. It's easy money. So the ambassador said, I'm going to do this. And he said, okay, Your Highness. He went ahead and took off his coat, and he took off his shirt, took off his undershirt, and he showed him, look, I'm not a hunchback. And the king said, you're right. I was wrong. You're not a hunchback. The 10,000 golden coins delivered to him, and he went back to his king. When the king found out what happened, he was furious. And he said, ambassador, didn't I tell you not to make any wagers when you're there? So the ambassador said, but Your Highness, this was easy money for you. I figured it made all the sense in the world to do it. So the king said, okay, you made me a lot of money, but I made a wager with that king for 100,000 golden coins that he could never get one of my men to take off his shirt. The ambassador had all the good intentions. But at the end of the day, the king told him something. He should listen to the king. And the point is that the king has his reasons. He may not tell you what they are, but he has his reasons. And what's most important is to listen to what he tells you. And that's the lesson here by the Rebbeinu Shalom. Nadav and Avihu had very deep, holy reasons for what they did. They had a burning love for Hashem. They wanted it to reciprocate. They wanted to show their love for Hashem. And that's why he did it. But at the end of the day, what matters is what Hashem tells us to do and what he doesn't want and what he tells us not to do. Because as much as we think that what we're doing makes all the sense in the world to do, the Rebbeinu Shalom knows better. He has his reasons, he knows better, and he knows what is the best. And therefore, as much as we want to show our love to Hashem, the greatest way to show our love is to follow his words and his will. Have a wonderful evening.